Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Three Questions interview with Commercial Integrator. I'm Commercial Integrator editor Tom LeBlanc, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Alan Brawn. Alan, as you know, is the principal of Brawn Consulting and a well-known industry resource when it comes to digital signage and all things video. Alan, thanks for being here with me.
Well, we're glad to participate. It's always good to talk to you, Tom.
Thank you, Alan. So are you ready to get into three questions for Commercial Integrator's audience?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so at this point we're kind of leading up to Digital Signage Expo 2018, and thinking about display technology in terms of a trend as we're leading up to DSE, it seems like everybody's talking about indoor fine pitch DirectView LED. I wanted to get from you, what do you think is driving the growth of that category?
Well, normally I would not say that that's a great question, but actually in this case, as you and I both know, that's an excellent question because there are really three things that are driving the growth, and it might not be obvious, but let's just kind of talk about those three things. Well, first of all, to drag up an old saw, if you will, from even my mother's childhood, God rest her soul, necessity is the mother of invention. And I love that because we do have a necessity here. The necessity that's driving this invention, if you will, is the growth of video walls, which is probably growing at 2x, Tom, and maybe even 3x what the overall AV market is growing. So video walls are definitely growing. But as they've grown, we've seen a real need for large and robust solutions that are seamless and not affected by the environment, such as ambient light and things like that. When we talk about being seamless, as you and I both know, the traditional LCD or even OLED type video wall has the mullions or the gaps between the displays, and that can be distracting. So when I talk about necessity being the mother of invention, this addresses one of the big issues, which is the seamless nature of DirectView LED. So that's number one. Number two, fine pitch LED is an indoor technology, and unlike outdoor DirectView LED, that's sold primarily direct from a manufacturer to an end user. So what's exciting to you and frankly to me, Tom, from a commercial integrator point of view or the integration industry overall, is the fact that this is all oriented towards being sold through the commercial AV integration market. So for the first time, we're seeing a DirectView LED product getting away from the great big huge outdoor stadium type applications. We're getting into something that our AV integrators can sell. And so that's basically the second reason. The third reason is not quite so obvious, but I'll share it with you anyway. The third reason is that we need something new to shout about in the commercial AV industry. Most of us who've been here for a long time, and as you know, I've been here for over 35 years. One of the things that really differentiates us, the heavy-duty performers, perhaps compared to the also-rans, are the people that can tell great stories. And great stories beget great conversations, and great conversations beget great opportunities. And so what we need is something new and interesting for the AV integrator to go and talk about, whether it's to a school system, people, whether it's to a corporation, whether it's a healthcare facility, whether it's a small athletic venue in either secondary education or higher education. So the ability to tell new stories and interesting, engaging stories. So it's that ability is really the third reason. So necessity, mother of invention. Fine pitch is now being marketed through the AV commercial AV integration channel, and it gives us something new to yell and scream and shout about from the rooftops.
I think that's interesting. You talk about how the AV industry needs something to kind of shout about, and also kind of tying in the whole element of telling a story. And with Digital Signage Expo kind of on the horizon, and everybody kind of talking about digital signage, one of the buzzwords we hear is engagement, and another buzzword we often hear is experience. And when it comes to digital signage, those things are kind of different. And I know this is something that you and I have talked about in the past, but I was hoping you could kind of talk about, like, what is the difference between engagement and experience when it comes to digital signage. And when you talk about engagement, what are some of the things that prompts that level of engagement when it comes to digital signage?
Well, you go to the head of the class in terms of creating questions to allow me to pontificate on a little bit, and so there is in all industries there's a proclivity to engage in buzzwords, and if you think about again all the years that you and I have known each other, we started out with the buzzword was solutions. And then we got into the buzzword of convergence, the convergence of AV and IT. So the most recent buzzword, if you will, is the experience. And if you think about Infocom changing the association name to Avixa, it's the AV experience. And all of that is well and good, but it doesn't go far enough. The experience is literally something that we come into contact with that does something to us both intellectually and emotionally. That is almost a dictionary definition of the experience. But first of all, engagement is primarily something different. It's primarily traced back to great content that prompts the engagement, but it also relates to the venue and the accessibility to the engagement opportunity. And this spans the variables from cell phones to video walls. I don't care whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's a display mounted on a wall. This is the engagement opportunity, if you will. So it starts with the experience, but the experience, as I said, doesn't go far enough. So the experience or the engagement really goes beyond the impressions that all the advertising folks speak about. In other words, they sell their ads based on impressions. If you and I go to Times Square, for example, and there are something like 4 million people that end up in any given week walking around Times Square, and they will say an impression is somebody who noticed a screen. That's an impression. But in the digital signage industry, it goes beyond the impression. It goes to the experience. But the next step is engagement. And the engagement really refers to that response to a call to action on the digital sign. Once that experience happens, how do we engage? What do we do about it? Now we have something that is meaningful. It's not just gee whiz. That's a wonderful impression. Gee whiz, that made me feel good. What am I going to do about that experience? That's what engagement is all about. The cool thing about engagement is that there are really several technologies that really relate to all of this. There are touchscreens, there are beacons, and there are NFC or near field communications. Touchscreens are everywhere. They really became popular, of course, with you got to pay homage to the good old Apple iPhone and the Retina displays, all of the nice little smartphones that we see. But it's really taken on a life of its own. And again, just like the DirectView LED in the video wall business, touchscreens are actually outpacing the overall industry as a whole in terms of growth. And the interesting part about touchscreens is they're what we call a natural interface. It doesn't take any education to learn how to use a touchscreen. I just wrote a piece the other day using the old AT&T phrase, reach out and touch someone. And even though it dates back to 1987, I think, Tom, even though I say it today and I think about who haven't I contacted recently whenever I hear that phrase, touchscreens make that a natural method of communication. And then, of course, beacons are really cool because I can walk into a given environment and the beacon is a very short distance wireless radio frequency, but wireless protocol that allows my mobile phone to be connected as I walk through an environment. And of course, near field communication is I can take that cell phone and come up to a display, get really near it, and then just by simply being in proximity, I can download the information. So what happens here is that this is really this whole engagement thing is wonderful. So you've got the experience, then you've got the engagement, so the viewer has done something about it. But here's what's really cool in this whole scenario. I call it the cherry on top of the hot fudge sundae, and that this all provides a perfect means to measure the efficacy, the efficiency, the result of the content, and even the digital signage network itself. So I'm kind of on my bandwagon, as you know, preaching, yeah, it's the experience, much more so than just the impression, but the experience is emotional, it could be psychological, it could be intellectual, but if I don't do anything with that experience, then I've got an issue. Engagement is being able to do something with the experience. And I think this is pretty cool, especially now since we have a perfect means to measure what we're doing.
Okay. I am going to have that AT&T song in my head for the rest of the day, as will our audience.
I knew you would, but think about it. It's really cool. Think about it. As I drag up some of these old ads that were so important in my younger days, as it were, and you look at it, you think, reach out and touch someone. You cannot hear that today without thinking to yourself, well, who haven't I contacted? Family, professional, whatever. So things like that stick with us, I guess, Tom.
No, that's true. Okay, so I want to shift back a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about the LED market, because it's an interesting market, right? There are so many LED manufacturers out there nowadays, many of them based in China. There's also kind of a proliferation of marketing claims around LED, to the point where I've heard one person talk about LED marketing as kind of like the Wild West, because you don't know what's what, you don't know what you're allowed to say, what's right, what's wrong. So think about it in the context of somebody walking around the Digital Signage Expo floor in 2018. What advice do you have for them to kind of determine, what's real, what's good, and what's not good when it comes to LED?
Well, I kind of like your way you described it, the DirectView LED market being the Wild West. It truly is. You get on your horse and go out into the pasture land, and you just don't know what you're going to run into. That's kind of where we're at today, no doubt about it. I'll just mention a couple of things that hopefully will give our listeners some idea of how to separate the proverbial wheat from the chaff. First of all, I want everybody to remember that the vast majority of manufacturers of the LEDs themselves, in other words, that core little tiny illumination device known as an LED, we see it in car headlights, we see it in lighting. The LED itself has taken the world by storm, literally, as an illumination device. Think of the move towards LED lighting away from incandescents in the house, for example. So almost all of these, the vast majority, there are a few exceptions, but the vast majority are manufactured, the core technology is manufactured in Asia. Also, in addition to that, the vast majority of companies taking those LEDs and placing them into some kind of a display configuration are also in Asia. I've got a point of reference, and I'm going to actually, as I'm thinking about this, the point of reference is a place called Shenzhen province in China. And literally in Shenzhen alone in China, there are hundreds of companies. I actually saw one research piece that I can't verify, but I saw one research piece that talked about there being almost 1,000 companies in China overall that manufacture some type of DirectView LED display. So I don't care, Tom, whether it's a few hundred or it's literally over 1,000. I sit here and the only word that comes to my mind is wow. Talk about a tsunami hitting a potential viewer in the face. Now, we're not going to go to DSE, we're not going to go to Infocom, we're not going to go to NAB and see thousands, but we are going to see a whole lot of manufacturers, some of whom we're not even familiar with. So the first thing that comes to my mind in all of this almost tsunami-like onslaught of DirectView LED manufacturers is quality control. You're going to get good displays. You're going to get some that are not quite so good. You're going to get some that are downright horrible. And so this kind of begs the question of how do we sort out the great products from those with inferior quality and service? Let's not forget, service is a big issue. One of the interesting things is, and Tom, my guess is that you and many of our listeners have the same issue where you're inundated now with these DirectView LED companies, basically from Asia, sending us these notes every day. Oh, I've got these inexpensive displays. You've never heard of the company. You've never heard of what they do. They have no track record, etc. And we get these emails. I know I get them. My guess is that you get them. And I know our viewers do as well. So how do we actually reduce our risk, if you will? Well, my advice is the safe bet is to work with DirectView LED companies that have a track record in the United States. Now, a lot of these companies are doing OEM, original equipment manufacturing, for some of the major names that we deal with. That's almost beside the point. My point is we need to trust the people that we know, the people that have a track records. In other words, people you can trust. All of the major display companies are now getting involved in FinePitch DirectView LED, period. All of them. Samsung, Christie, Layard Planar, and NEC, just to name a few. Name a big display company and chances are they're entering DirectView LED. There are other names you may not be familiar with, such as Absen and Unilumin, both reliable, substantial companies out of the East. I'll give you one concrete example that's come up lately. One company that's recently gotten into the fine pitch game is a company called Lighthouse, with nearly 30 years experience in large outdoor displays, Dodgers Stadium, Seattle Mariners, Churchill Downs, the Indy 500, displays like that. They've been marketed for years through Panasonic using the Lighthouse name, but now Lighthouse has a whole separate division, and they're now entering this new market under their own name. So whether it's an existing display company you're familiar with, the Samsungs, Christie, Layard, Planar, NECs of this world, or whether it's a new company like an Absen, Unilumin, or most recently a Lighthouse, we want to take a look at these names that have provenance, that have credibility in the industry. And my final admonition on the issue of this is, my admonition is look beyond the price and look at service and total cost of ownership. Nowhere have I seen it more true than you get what you pay for in the total cost of ownership and service of a DirectView LED supplier. So there you kind of have it in a nutshell. It is truly let the buyer beware, but when you go to DSE, you're not going to have hundreds of people to look at. You might have 20. Be sure and visit all 20, and I think you'll like what you see.
Good stuff, Alan. So Alan Brawn from Brawn Consulting, thank you so much for taking the time to answer 3 questions for Commercial Integrator's audience.
Thank you for inviting me, Tom. It's always good to talk to you.